the only communication between the organization and him at the moment is they brought him in for a physical to see physically that he was still there. So there's not a lot on this story yet, but it's definitely something worth keeping an eye on for the remainder of the season.
And I'm just surprised that Plaxico Burress has been on the free agent wire for this long. Obviously, Plaxico Burress scoring double-digit touchdowns just last year with the Jets, and he was facing what would be one of the worst quarterbacks in the league. Mark Sanchez is not developing. So you put him into a city like the Steelers, hard-nosed team that can't really find its niche on the offensive side. They found it recently as they seem to be going on a roll. But putting Byron Leftwich into this lineup, as good of a quarterback as he is, Pittsburgh still has a tough schedule. And this reminds me of the scenario that the Chicago Bears had, where when Jay Cutler last year was out of the starting lineup, Chicago was one of the most powerful teams in the league. But they could just not play with this backup quarterback, and Pittsburgh has not clinched anything yet. So they still need to rack up the wins, and I'm sure that Pittsburgh, is very concerned as they go after a guy like Plaxico Burress. And just overall, for the Pittsburgh Steelers, it's very concerning coming down the stretch with a backup quarterback where you can't beat an injury-plagued team like the Ravens. Now, let's tip our hats to a team like Baltimore that really has played tough recently, after having, some big-time question marks with Ladarius Webb and Ray Lewis out for the year. Pittsburgh must be concerned. We're at home against a division rival. They could not pull it out. And outside of a Byron Leftwich rushing touchdown, they go 59 minutes with only one field goal to show for their offensive success. Byron Leftwich, below average performance in this game. He's a backup, but overall for Pittsburgh, they can't play him the backup for an offensive performance that might risk them not even making it to the postseason.
Yeah, I mean, when you think Baltimore-Pittsburgh, these games tend to always end, within a field goal. 13-10 might have been the score, regardless of who's playing quarterback. This is a really tough game to judge them on. Just because the Ravens and Steelers games are always kind of the same. It's always, hard-nosed, hard-hitting. You never, know what to expect every time. Their schedule, going down doesn't exactly get any better for them. But it really just depends on how long Roethlisberger will be out, which will definitely impact the success of this team.
And the impacted success could go, obviously, the same scenario, a very talented team that without their quarterback could struggle. Pittsburgh faces that situation along with another dominant team right now in the NFC. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers are really making some hay. They are really coming onto a streak as of late. They're 6-4 in the NFC South. And in anyone's division, seemingly, Falcons are struggling, and the New Orleans Saints still a game behind these Bucs. What to make of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers? We'll get to all that and more on NFL Goal Line as we get to a quick 30-second break. We'll be right back.
Eagles coach Andy Reid be on his way out after this year as he is reportedly making no changes for the remainder of the season. The NFL Goal Line with Nick and Phil continues.
Yeah, we missed the opening part there, but is Andy Reid set for another season after this year? Obviously, plenty of dilemmas to go around in that scenario over in Philadelphia. We'll get to that later on in the broadcast. But hey, those Tampa Bay Buccaneers, an overtime win, yet another victory for this Buccaneers squad, and what to make for a very hot team in Tampa Bay that really has its niche coming up as of late. Carolina is not a dominant team, but offensively, Tampa Bay can compete with anyone, and as long as the defense, led under Graziano, can make plays and create turnovers, those tough defensive plays that win games, that seems to be the forte for winning the Super Bowl. Tampa Bay, as long as they get in the hunt and as long as they get in, they'll be a very powerful team that can really make some hay in the NFC playoff picture.
Well, I was able to watch that entire Buccaneers game, and I was very impressed with the way, it was a very exciting game all the way down to the wire. Dallas Clark, being the hero, scoring a touchdown. You mentioned it. This team's 6-4. If the Falcons didn't start off 8-0, this is a team that's right in the thick of it. I think the reason that they're not getting as much attention is because the Falcons are still very much ahead of them. Josh Freeman has been playing better as of late. Doug Martin, we've talked about many times on this show. In this particular game, 138 yards rushing, no touchdowns, but definitely a huge lift for this team. Vincent Jackson having 94 yards and a touchdown. Over 7 different players had receptions in this game for Tampa Bay. So it's a team that overall is just looking really good and might just be hitting a stride at the right time.
And obviously, for Josh Freeman, it's very nice to have a couple of big-time receiving threats, big-time receiver in Vincent Jackson, also a go-to man. Peyton Manning used to love Dallas Clark. Now he's over in Tampa Bay, and he is making some big-time plays, and he scored that overtime, a thrilling winning catch for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And even though the defense is extremely abysmal, last in the passing game and their first in rush defense, but that might be because teams just bail on rushing the football against this team and just go straight for the passing game. And if it weren't for some big-time clutch performances, fourth down conversions, and a last-second touchdown drive by Josh Freeman, this would be a whole different discussion. But Tampa Bay at 6-4 at a very good spot. Because Seattle is not a team that's going to rack up 11 or 12 wins in the wild card picture. Atlanta might run away with that division. They already have 9 wins, 9-1 on the year. I don't believe that Atlanta will drop 4 or 5 of its last 6 to lose that division. So for Tampa Bay, you have to look at the wild card implications. And even though Green Bay came out with a tough, nail-biting win against the Detroit Lions, it's still anyone's wild card picture. They have the tiebreaker over the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, but with those 3 teams at 6-4, it's anyone's contest. And if I'm a betting man, if there's any team that's going to come up out of the teams in the hunt, out of the Buccaneers and the Saints, I believe that it's Tampa Bay with a dominant offense that's going to get it done down the stretch and make their way into the postseason. Maybe not a division winner, but a wild card contender nonetheless.
Well, even if this team, is just shy of the playoffs, I think the most important thing for Buccaneers fans or anyone that supports Tampa Bay is this is a team that lost 10 games in a row last year, which ended up, leading to the firing of their head coach, which it looks as though that's a blessing in disguise right now. Either way, this team is, picking up steam for, this year and years to come. But, I got to say, if we're going to play Hey Hey Tampa Bay on this station, that I got to play the other Tampa Bay song here, because this is the one that we really hear around here.
Who you with, dog? With the Bucks, dog. Shit, all the way Raymond James, dog. Dog, with the crazy offense, fucking is, dog. I'm talking about the Bucks, yo. Welcome to Tampa, home of the Raymond James, where the Bucks put it down and they bring the pain. Man, you hear them cannons shooting, all the fans rooting, rookies are child free. Now that we got John Gruden, every game off the chain, now they Chuck's in here, and you gon' walk the plank if you ain't a Buccaneer. What's up in here? We got the other team fans leaving because I hate with the offense out for the season.
It's old, but it's still good. And I might be an Eagles fan, but I always loved hearing that song. Good things for Tampa Bay, 6-4. I'm excited to see them the rest of the way.
And obviously that rapper or any of the music artists that made that song, I would obviously that's not going to contend with any of Eminem's or any of the tremendous raps around around America right now. But obviously. Not a great song, but a song that really speaks of the team that has really come back after a 10-game losing streak last year, as you mentioned, coming back with tremendous Schiano, and you got to tip your hat off to a guy that was really put in a bad spot with a terrible defense and an offense that really self-destructed last year. He really set the tone for Tampa Bay, and he acquired Dallas Clark and Vincent Jackson off of free agency, two guys that were tough to get into their building. They were able to get it done, and they made a mindset that now's the time that we want to get success going and a positive winning attitude in Tampa Bay. And they're getting it done. And Greg Schiano, you got to tip a half off to a guy that was put in a terrible spot and really has turned this team around. And after a overtime win, it just shows the kind of clutch mental toughness that Tampa Bay has had and has really shown during this nice winning streak. And we spoke about another team in that NFC South that is really making some hay. New Orleans 38-17 victory, and they're only cracking the 500 mark, and we're at week number 11. But perhaps the hottest team in the NFL right now, outside of a few teams in the AFC, New Orleans is set for, with that dominant offense, they're set for another 10 or 11 win season. Now, obviously, 0-4 might reek, deep into New Orleans if they can't make the postseason. But 5-5 right now, and a dominant offense and a defense that can contend and create turnovers. If New Orleans or Tampa Bay meets again, I don't know if I want to go straight for Tampa Bay in that matchup. And obviously, this NFC South can go right down to the wire. What to make of New Orleans after barely cracking 500, but an offense that can contend with any team in the NFL?
Well, after starting 0-4, I'm sure these guys are ecstatic to be at 500 at this point. I think it's safe to say, as far as the wild card's concerned, it's not big enough for both of them. Tampa Bay might get in, New Orleans might get in, but one of them is going to end up knocking the other one out. So you might have to think about how they fit, matching up against each other. Obviously, Tampa, you mentioned, with the not as good defense. Both these teams having pretty good offenses. Saints defense has improved, but it's still not something you can hang your hat on at the moment. They did have a great game this past week. It was against Oakland, so you can call that for whatever it is. But whenever you put up 38 points, your team's obviously operating well. Drew Brees playing well, carrying that team. The defense statistically not playing well, but making big plays and getting big turnovers, which when you have a team like that, you pretty much have to live and die by the turnovers. As long as they keep coming, the Saints might keep winning.
And obviously, New Orleans, led by a very impressive quarterback, Drew Brees. He's one of the top ranked Pro Bowl quarterbacks as well in the NFC. He's a guy that can put up big-time numbers, not obviously putting up 300 yards like he normally does, only 219 today, but 20 of 27. Even though Oakland struggles against the pass, this is still a tremendous performance for a quarterback that's really coming into his own as of late. And obviously, if it weren't for an 0-4 start, and I believe that even 500 might be a stretch because a couple of games, San Diego coming up week number 5, they had some very, very fortunate calls for New Orleans in that game. The following week, Tampa Bay just could not knock on the door from 1 yard away, and just everything self-destructive for Tampa Bay. And that was a very close game as well. So New Orleans has started 0-4, started winning some very, very close games that could have gone either way. And even though this team is 500, we could easily see a team that's 4-6 or 3-7 right now at this point. New Orleans is in a very tight spot in the NFC South and in the NFC as general, and a very lucky spot, at that. But if there's any team that's going to knock off the current Green Bay Packers or Seattle Seahawks in the wild card picture right now, they're both 6-4. Who would you take to be knocking off one of those teams and making the NFC wildcard picture?
Well, like I said, both these teams, one of them is going to end up knocking the other one out. And, watching the Saints game when they played last time is really what I'm going off of. Obviously, an interesting call made. Vince Jackson stepping out of bounds and then catching the ball, so negating the touchdown. People forget that the Bucs were winning 21-0, in that game. So if they're able to keep that lead, who knows what will happen. Obviously their defense started giving up big plays. But, again, when you compare these two teams and considering they're in the same division, you have to look at the matchup on who would win when they play each other. And I feel New Orleans had a lot of things go their way the first time, and I feel the next time when they play each other, Tampa Bay would beat them, and they could very well, at least for this year, be the better team.
And obviously at 6-4 speaks words over the 5-5 record of New Orleans. And both these teams have tough schedules coming up. Both have to face Atlanta as well in the coming weeks. And it'll be very interesting coming down to the wire how Tampa Bay or New Orleans keeps on winning, because it's seemingly, for New Orleans, it's been a must-win since week number 5. But for Tampa Bay, it's seemingly as if you can't put